The fourth Republican debate is here. Many critics say that what we have seen so far are pat answers to issues that Americans really care about. Just in the last debate, Marco Rubio avoided responding to questions about his finances and whether he could handle the federal budget. Ted Cruz took a stab at the same tactic when instead of responding, he accused the moderators of making gotcha questions. This latest debate will be on the economy, but will the candidates start giving answers with substance, especially to Latino voters who have seemed to be singled out so that candidates can be more appealing to voters on the far right? Joining me to discuss what are the Latino conservatives doing about this are Mario Lopez, president of the Hispanic Leadership Fund, and Alfonso Aguilar, executive director for Latino Partnerships and Conservative Principles. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having us.
And I have to say, we have been colleagues for a long time, and it's interesting and fun that you guys have been able to join on this discussion on the eve of the fourth Republican debate. And I wanted to get a little bit of your take. For the very first time, the Republican Latinos banded together, basically took a stand in saying, we want substance and we want folks not to scapegoat the Latino community. Talk a little bit about how that was organized and if you feel like you've received results. Alfonso.
Well, yeah, of course. Well, you know, Mario and I and others, I mean, some of the top Hispanic conservative Republican leaders and groups of the country met for the first time during a primary before the debate in Boulder, Colorado, and we had a discussion about the tone of the debate over immigration and the Hispanic community, and we're certainly not happy, and we felt that we needed to come forward and publicly denounce Donald Trump, who's using terrible language when it comes to the Hispanic community, and proposing solutions on immigration that are just hardline and are offensive to Latinos. So we felt that we couldn't remain silent. We needed to speak up. And with the other candidates, we just warned them. We warned them that we don't want them to embrace Trump's rhetoric and policies.
And Mario, did you see, and I think that's right. So Mario, has this ever been done before? In recent memory, I can't remember a group from either party coming together and basically saying you have to stop this type of rhetoric and blaming a community before. Has that ever happened before?
To our knowledge, this has never happened in a primary of either party, as you mentioned. And I think that, Alfonso hit the nail on the head. I would just say one thing in addition to that, and that's that it's not just the rhetoric, which of course is a problem from Donald Trump and others, but it's also the fact that, some of that rhetoric leads them down a path of proposing so-called solutions. I wouldn't call them solutions because at the end of the day, they're not really going to solve the mess that we're in, with immigration policy.
Dig a little deeper in that, Mario. What do you mean by so-called solutions?
Well, I mean, refusing to defend the entire Constitution and putting, birthright citizenship in jeopardy, which is protected by the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, I think is hugely counterproductive to goals that we have as conservatives in terms of encouraging assimilation, in terms of encouraging people to come together. Our national motto is E pluribus unum, out of many one, and, taking away citizenship and putting it in the political realm instead of a constitutionally protected realm, I think would be a disaster long term for the entire country.
So how do you reconcile that? Because we're starting to see from both camps increasingly this idea of creating, and I'm assuming you're talking about the comprehensive immigration reform too, when you say that, when folks are increasingly saying that we should provide some sort of pathway to citizenship, but not necessarily some sort of pathway to residency, but not necessarily citizenship. How are you reconciling that rhetoric? Alfonso?
Well, I mean, there are pathways to citizenship. And I think that pretty much under any sort of smart reform, you're going to have a process where people go through. Now, some folks on the far left want to just automatically grant everyone citizenship, regardless of, what they did or how they got here. I don't really think that's a solution either. Right. That's tenable. So, we have to find the right balance between making sure that folks are accountable, but having tough but also reasonable solutions and penalties for folks.
So, and Alfonso, when you made the call to the party saying that there was going to be this press conference, were they taken aback?
Well, I think so. You know, I've said that what we're seeing within U.S. politics is the Latino community coming to age, a community that I think is much more sophisticated politically.
We're still young. Come on, Alfonso.
I know, but I don't think they were expecting us to come together. I mean, these are the main leaders and organizations that they count on to engage the Latino community. For us to speak up, normally they approach us after the primary, when in the general election, when they need to engage the Latino community. And what we're saying is we want to be heard now, and we have concerns. But let me tell you, to go back to your question, I mean, I think immigration reform, the real immigration reform we need in Congress, is in jeopardy by positions that candidates are taking, a few candidates, in the Republican primary, but also in the Democratic primary. On one hand, we have Trump saying, you know, let's deport everyone. But on the left, we have Hillary and Bernie Sanders just saying, well, we're going to go beyond Obama on executive action. The message that that's sending to congressional Republicans is, we're not going to work with you. And the reality is that the only way we can resolve this is by achieving consensus between Republicans and Democrats to provide a path to legal status to undocumented immigrants.
Well, I think that's the challenge, is the consensus right now. I think that folks, both whoever controls the Congress and the administration right now, it's not just immigration, it's several other issues, and this is definitely a flashpoint. But let's get back to that. Let's dig in. So tonight we're going to see the Republicans talk about the economy, and you can't have a conversation on the economy if you don't talk about immigration reform. What do you guys expect to see today? Mario.
Well, I mean, I think unfortunately, I think you're going to see more of the same. I think that, candidates are going to probably dig in on their issues. Hopefully they'll explain a little bit more, because it'll be during the course of that explanation where we're going to start to see some of the real faults with, some of the policies that Alfonso and I and others have highlighted. For example, protecting the 14th Amendment. For example, recognizing the economic contributions of immigrants all over the country, and the disruption that would take place if we were to follow Donald Trump's disastrous, we're going to get rid of 11 million people plan. That's, I think, what folks need to stop to think about, especially in a Republican primary, is how disastrous that would be to the overall economy and therefore to American citizens.
That's right.
If we were to do that.
So, Alfonso, I'm going to give you then the last word. How does the GOP then recover from this? The fact that the RNC earlier had basically signed on the dotted line that if Donald Trump became the nominee, they would support him and vice versa. And then slowly, inching, going down the road, this idea that they all of a sudden decide not to do a debate with NBC and Telemundo, their only Spanish-speaking outlet. And increasingly, at the same time, not going back and basically holding their Republican slate accountable for a lot of this divisive rhetoric. How do they recover?
Well, I think it's possible. Look, not every candidate in the GOP field is like Donald Trump. And I think the environment right now is very toxic, and it does affect whoever the candidate ends up being. But I think we do have strong candidates like Marco Rubio, even Ben Carson, who wants to deal with the issue constructively, even Jeb Bush, who I wouldn't roll out, who's actually talked about immigration as an economic driver. Candidates like that who are constructive on the issue could eventually get the support of more Latino voters in the general election.
How though?
Rhetoric is.
How can they? How can they recover from this when a lot of folks, even a lot of independent Latinos that I've spoken to, have seen that they just don't feel like even the party has their back?
Because I think Latinos are very smart. I think they don't buy this narrative that Democrats are good on immigration, Republicans are bad. They're going to look at the candidate. They know that Obama promised immigration reform. The first year of his administration, he didn't deliver. And now they're hearing from Hillary the same type of rhetoric that has got us to where we're right now without immigration reform. So I think that if they see a candidate like a Jeb Bush who is saying, we have to do immigration reform, who's proven that he can build consensus on issues like this, I think they will go with a candidate like that. They'll be very competitive. I think for Democrats to think that, right now, because the environment is so toxic, that they're in good shape for the general with Latino voters, I think that would be very naive.
Well, and thank you so much. Thank you, Mario Lopez and Alfonso Aguilar.